The method section of a research paper is like preparing a recipe. Let's say you wish to prepare a particular recipe by viewing a YouTube video. You will receive a clear step-by-step processes and the ingredients required for preparing the recipe. If you follow the same steps, the same process and the same ingredients, then you will end up in preparing the same recipe, perhaps with the same flavor. So the objective of the methodology section is to help other researchers replicate your study. You need to provide clear details and the processes involved in carrying out the research. You can't afford to miss any essential details. At the same time, you should avoid rambling and refrain from presenting unnecessary information. But if your method is new or unconventional, you need to mention the specifics in detail. So in this video, let me throw light on the various processes involved in the method section. Although the examples in this video are discussed in the context of educational technology, researchers from other disciplines may also find this video practically useful. Just like other videos in this series, this video also has 3 segments. In the first part, I'll elucidate the components of writing a method section. In the second part, let me show you some practical examples, and eventually let me give you a worksheet for applying it in the context of your study. So, what are the details we need to include? What are the details you need to include? Well, that depends on the design. Let me discuss a few tips, or let me give you a few tips for an empirical design. I'll do a separate video on a qualitative study later. The first thing you need to do in your methodology section is to provide a strong rationale as to why you chose that particular design. Editors and reviewers would like to see if you have used the appropriate method. For instance, if you have used a quasi-experimental design, you should provide a strong rationale as to why you use a quasi-experimental design. So depending on your design, go and check the APA guidelines. Look at the guidelines of your target journal. You would definitely find some practical tips on reporting the method section. Also look at similar designs. Look at how other researchers have applied from top-notch journals in your field. This will give you a clear idea on how to report the method section. After making this preliminary study, just move on to describe the step-by-step process of how you actually carried out your research. It will be a good idea to break your methodology section into specific subsections. For each subsection, give appropriate titles. Let me explain that a little later in detail. Address these WH questions. Questions like who, what, when, where, why, and how. See, for example, who are your participants? What is their age? What does their age mean? What is the standard deviation? What is the sample size? So who are your participants? Then what? What is your sampling procedure? What are your research variables? What are the materials you used? What are the instruments you used for for your research design? Was it a questionnaire? Was it an observation? So what is the method that you used? And then where? When you talk about where, you will talk about setting. Where did your research take place? In higher education, what is the name of the university? What is the setting? In which country is it located? So you need to mention where, the setting of your research, and when, the duration, from when to when. How long did this period? Was it a span of 6 months, or did this research go on for a year or a couple of years? So that is what I mean by when, and why. Why the particular design? So you need to mention the specifics of that design, and then how did you measure the variables? How did you assess the performance? So you will be mentioning all this in these WH questions. So remember these WH questions when you write your design, and do not provide descriptive information in your methodology section. Let your methodology section be supported by visuals and tables. So you need to avoid a lot of comprehensive detailed information. So information should be very crisply presented in tables and figures. Actually, there are a lot of free templates for designing your figures. I mean, if you just Google it, I have just left a link of those templates in the description box. You may just download those templates and use it in the context of your study. So you can fine tune it or customize it based on your requirements. So I have provided the link for that. And present your information in a chronological order. And most importantly, in your method section, discuss the reliability and validity of your data. For instance, if you are doing a pretest design, then you need to do a homogeneity test. Then you need to say if your pairs, if your groups are identical, you have two groups, or they homogeneous, do they have parity before the test? So, and what is the Cronbach's alpha? So you need to talk about the validity issues of your data. So these are some of the important aspects. Let me give you a brief recap. Just give a rationale of your study, and then answer these questions, WH questions like when, who, where, what and how, and go through some free template designs and have 2 or 3 clear figures and tables for your methodology section. Design those figures and then go on and present descriptive information. Now let us move on to the application part of it. Let me show you some examples and show you how you can actually carry out the methodology section so that what we discuss will further be reinforced. So take a look at this sample methodology worksheet. Before writing any paper, I use this kind of rough framework. And I have communicated a paper to one of the journals, British Journal of Educational Technology, a top-notch journal in educational technology. And this paper is in review, but I haven't got any feedback yet for the methodology section, whereas I am doing a second review for other subsections. So I thought since the methodology section is very strong, I can show this as a sample. See, as I mentioned earlier, in the methodology section, first of all, restate your research questions. Remember, the first thing you need to do is to restate your research questions. See, I have mentioned here, the first research question aims to measure the learner's cognitive improvement. The second research question aims to measure the learner's development in affective domain. So, what your research questions are, so restate them, show them the
That will provide the context. Secondly, mention the design. So what is the design you have used? So I have stated a pre-test post-test design. A pre-test post-test control group design was chosen for this study. So after mentioning about my design, I have provided a rationale as to why I chose that particular design. See, according to Rogers and Revis, a true experimental design is by far the best method for an intervention study. So whatever your study is, find some supporting information as to why the study is appropriate, preferably with a citation. So that will provide a validity for your study. And then describe your setting and location. So I have described here. The study was conducted at B.S. Abdul Rahman Present Institute of Science and Technology. It's a 27-year-old technical institute of higher education in central India. The time frame for the study was 6 months. So mention where your university is, where did the study take place, and the time frame, how long was the study conducted. Then you just mention clear details about the participants. As I mentioned earlier, it is always better to mention your figures, mention the details in figures. Take a look at this figure. See, I have just said that the participants, sample size of the participants is N is equal to 72 participants. 6 of them discontinued from the study. So in blended instruction, there was 33, and in online immersion, there was 33. The mean age of my group A is 18.5. The mean age of my group B is 18.4. Whereas in the first methodology, there was 20% of teacher intervention, and in the second methodology, there was no teacher intervention at all. So people, when you present something in figures, just like these mind mapping tools, using mind mapping tools, the information could be presented in an easy and understandable manner. So present information graphically. This is what I mentioned by using graphs. So after presenting a detailed information about the participants, go on and describe what is your sampling procedure. Is it a systematic sampling, or is it clustered, or is it stratified, or is it convenience sampling, or is your sampling strategy a snowball sampling? So I have highlighted here the sampling method used in the study was simple random sampling. Randomization increases the validity of your study. So what is your sample size? What is your sampling procedure? And why the sampling procedure is appropriate for your study? Then mention your research variables. What are your research variables? So in my study, the variables are the cognitive and the affective factors are the variables in my study. So I am measuring my learners' performance. I am measuring my learners' confidence level after my intervention. So this is what I mean by variables. Also mention what are your independent variables and what are your dependent variables. And also mention if your samples have homogeneity before the test. Look at my example. 33 students were randomly allocated to the control group and 33 students were randomly allocated to the experimental group. The mean age of the control group was 18.5 and it was 18.4 for the experimental group. So the similar identical mean, both of them belong to the similar age groups, which means that the samples are homogeneous in terms of age. I can also show in the pre-test their performances were identical. So that is what I mean by homogeneity or parity of samples. And then you need to very clearly, elaborately mention whether you have got the informed consent from the participants or the research ethics. Was your study approved by your institutional review board? So you have to mention all those details if your study is an empirical study. And then what is your course content? So I have mentioned my course content here in table. See, I have mentioned this is what I did in the first week. So week 1 and week 2, these are my activities. Week 3 and 4, this is my topic, these are my activities. So don't provide descriptive information, provide your information in tables. So ultimately, I have also discussed my phases of the study. I say that my study has 5 phases. Again, I don't present descriptive information. I show that in figures. Take a look at this figure. See, I have said that my first phase I have used instructional media. The second phase I have used presentation tools. Third phase I used multimedia creation and editing tools. Fourth phase I used collaboration tools, and fifth phase was evaluation tools. So mention that in figures. And then, as I said, there are a lot of free templates where you can design figures. So after you do that, then you ultimately mention what are the data analytics tools you used. What is the software package you use for analyzing a data. It could be a simple Excel, or it could be SPSS, or a MATLAB, or is it, did you use R? So what is your tool that you use for statistical analysis? So in my study, I have used SPSS version 24, was used for analysis of data. So I have mentioned that. I have also mentioned what test I used. I used a paired t-test to find out the mean difference. So, you clearly describe what is the tool you used for data analysis. So your sections could vary depending on your research design. So it was just a sample. I know that one size will not fit all. I know that this one worksheet will not be a panacea for all your research designs. But I do believe that this video would have helped you to get a hang of the methodology section. Thanks for viewing, and do subscribe if you find it practically useful. And don't forget to download the sample worksheet. And most importantly, before I leave, one final take-home message. My final take-home message is look at the sample template. See, you use the sample template to use for your study. And if you feel that you have to insert any component, you can insert any other component. So you're welcome to use this sample template. So thank you for viewing.